Hollywood's golden age gave us legends whose faces still grace movie posters today. Cary Grant's debonair charm, James Dean's rebellious intensity, Rock Hudson's masculine perfection. But behind those iconic smiles lay a darker truth that the studios buried for decades. These weren't just actors who happened to be talented. They were young men who discovered that in Hollywood's shadowy ecosystem, talent alone would never open the right doors. Instead, they learned that their bodies were currency, their silence was survival, and their secrets were leveraged in a game controlled by powerful men who remained nameless. What you're about to hear challenges everything you thought you knew about Hollywood's most beloved era. 20 men, 20 stories of compromise, survival, and the ultimate price of stardom. If you're ready to see behind the golden facade, hit that subscribe button and let's uncover the truth together. James Dean, the rebel who never had a choice. Summer 1951. A 20-year-old from Indiana steps off a Greyhound bus in Los Angeles with $37 and a suitcase held together with rope. James Dean had no connections, no agent, no plan beyond a desperate belief that Hollywood needed what he had to offer. Within weeks, Dean discovered the unwritten rules of the industry. At the Chateau Marmont, he met Rogers Brackett, a seasoned theater director who offered mentorship with strings attached. Brackett wasn't just interested in Dean's potential, he was buying it. According to actress Christine White, who lived near Brackett's apartment, Dean's nights often ended in tears behind locked bathroom doors. But each morning, he emerged ready to play whatever role was required, on screen and off. The price of visibility was steep. Dean attended exclusive parties where young men were identified by numbers rather than names. He was number 6, beautiful, quiet, and crucially, compliant. When CBS offered Dean his first television role, it came through an overnight arrangement with an older investor. Dean never said no because he understood the mathematics of survival. One night of compromise could mean weeks of not washing dishes at that diner near Sunset Boulevard. But fame built on such foundations proved fragile. In 1955, just as his career reached its peak, Dean died in a mysterious car crash. He was 24, forever frozen in rebellion, carrying secrets that died with him on that desolate California highway. Rock Hudson, the gentleman who served in silence. Rock Hudson embodied everything 1950s America wanted in a leading man. 6'4", square-jawed, with a voice that could melt hearts and a smile that sold millions of movie tickets. But behind the wholesome image was a man whose career was built on a foundation of carefully orchestrated arrangements. Henry Wilson, Hollywood's most powerful agent, didn't discover Hudson's acting ability first. He recognized his potential as what Wilson's own memos called premium companionship. Hudson was handsome, discreet, and most importantly, obedient. From Beverly Hills hotel suites to Palm Springs estates, Hudson became a fixture at exclusive gatherings where his presence secured multi-million-dollar film deals. These weren't auditions in any traditional sense. They were transactions where Hudson's compliance guaranteed studio financing from wealthy anonymous backers. A recorded phone conversation between Wilson and producer Ross Hunter, later published in Scotty Bauer's memoir, revealed the cold calculation behind Hudson's career. He can handle 2 clients per night as long as no one takes pictures, Wilson noted with businesslike efficiency. Even as Hudson became America's romantic ideal, starring opposite Doris Day and earning millions, he remained trapped in the web that created him. A crumpled note found after his death from AIDS complications contained a haunting confession. I was never allowed to say no. The man who represented masculine perfection to an entire generation had spent his life as a beautiful prisoner, his every move choreographed by handlers who viewed him as an asset rather than a human being. Cary Grant, the debonair mask of desperation. Cary Grant represented the pinnacle of sophistication, witty, elegant, the perfect gentleman. But beneath that carefully cultivated persona was a young man who had learned early that survival in Hollywood required flexibility in ways the public could never imagine. Grant's relationship with actor Randolph Scott began as a financial necessity. Two struggling actors sharing a Malibu beach house, they discovered that their arrangement attracted the attention of influential men who valued discretion and accessibility. Their beachside gatherings became legendary among Hollywood's inner circle. Directors, studio executives, and financial backers attended parties where Grant and Scott provided entertainment that extended far beyond cocktail conversation. When Grant landed the lead in Bringing Up Baby, it came after a private evening with 3 directors who had disappeared with him into a locked upstairs room. The film became a classic, but the audition process remained Grant's secret. Even after achieving international stardom, Grant couldn't escape the expectations that had launched his career. A 1955 incident at the Biltmore Hotel, documented by Confidential magazine, showed Grant leaving with a European film financier at 2 a.m., just days before signing on to Catch a Thief. Grant's 5 marriages were perhaps his most convincing performances, elaborate productions designed to deflect attention from the truth of his arrangements. He understood that in Hollywood, perception was reality, and reality was too dangerous to acknowledge. Until his death in 1986, Grant never responded to rumors or speculation. He had learned that silence was the only currency more valuable than beauty in a town built on beautiful lies. Montgomery Clift, the tortured soul who paid in pieces. Montgomery Clift's eyes held a sadness that transcended any role he played. That melancholy wasn't just exceptional acting. It was the weight of a man who had sold pieces of himself to purchase a career, piece by piece, night by night. Before anyone knew his name, Clift answered an ad for a private audition at a Bel Air mansion. Director Joshua Logan wasn't just looking for talent. He was shopping for compliance. After 3 days at the mansion, Clift emerged with a contract and something broken behind his eyes. Elizabeth Taylor, his closest friend, knew fragments of the truth. In diary entries discovered after her death, Taylor recorded Clift's confession. "A friend introduced me to a stage director to trade intimacy for a part. When I remember it, I feel like a part of me died." Clift's method wasn't just acting technique. It was a survival mechanism. He had learned to dissociate, to float above situations that required his body, but not his presence. This psychological escape route served him well in scenes requiring emotional authenticity, but it destroyed his ability to connect with reality. The car accident that shattered his face in 1956 was perhaps a mercy. It gave him a visible reason for the pain that had been consuming him for years. But even as his career declined, Clift continued to answer calls from men who remembered the beautiful, compliant boy he had once been. When he died in 1966, alone in his Manhattan townhouse, the official cause was heart failure. But those who knew him understood he had been dying slowly for decades, one compromise at a time. Sal Mineo, the beautiful boy who knew too much. Sal Mineo was 16 when Hollywood discovered him, and that youth was both his greatest asset and his ultimate vulnerability. Cast as James Dean's best friend in Rebel Without a Cause, Mineo possessed an almost otherworldly beauty that made powerful men forget about boundaries and consent. The role that launched his career came through a personal audition at a producer's private residence. Mineo later told a friend, "They said I'd get the part if I could convince them I was soft enough." The next morning, his name appeared on official audition lists. As Dean's career skyrocketed, Mineo found himself increasingly disposable. After Dean's death, the industry that had once treasured Mineo's youth began to view him as a liability, someone who knew too much about how business was really conducted. By the late 1960s, Mineo was selling himself to survive, maintaining arrangements with two Palm Springs directors who provided small roles in exchange for regular visits. The boy who had once commanded top billing was now trading dignity for bit parts in B-movies. But Mineo made a fatal error. He began to speak. In 1976, he told a CBS reporter, "I've got names, photos, tapes. If something happens to me, go find them." 1 week later, Sal Mineo was stabbed to death outside his West Hollywood apartment. Police called it a robbery, but his wallet remained untouched, his watch still on his wrist. His briefcase, rumored to contain evidence of Hollywood's darkest secrets, vanished. Mineo's murder was a message to anyone else who might be tempted to break the silence that protected an industry built on exploitation. Tab Hunter, the all-American boy's hidden price. Tab Hunter was the embodiment of 1950s masculinity, blonde, athletic, the boy next door that every parent wanted for their daughter. But that wholesome image was purchased through years of carefully managed deception and strategic compromise. In 1950, 19-year-old Hunter was arrested at a gay party in Long Beach, a scandal that should have ended his career before it began. Instead, an unnamed producer saw opportunity in Hunter's desperation. The charges disappeared, replaced by an exclusive contract that bound Hunter to more than just film obligations. Throughout his golden years, Hunter was forced into fake romances with actresses like Natalie Wood and Debbie Reynolds, elaborate theater designed to obscure his real relationships. Every public appearance, every magazine interview, every candid photograph was choreographed to maintain an illusion that was literally life or death. Hunter's handlers didn't just manage his career, they owned his identity. He was told what to wear, where to go, who to date, and most importantly, who to sleep with when the cameras weren't rolling. His compliance wasn't just professional, it was a matter of survival in an industry that destroyed those who refused to play by its hidden rules. In his 2005 memoir, Hunter finally acknowledged the price of his success. "I wasn't chosen for my acting. I was chosen because I was willing to be quiet and beautiful in the way Hollywood needed." Hunter lived to see a more accepting world, but only after sacrificing decades of his authentic self to maintain an image that made millions while slowly killing the man behind it. Dennis Hopper, the rebel who surrendered to stay alive. Dennis Hopper represented everything the 1960s counterculture admired: wild, unpredictable, authentically dangerous. But even rebels need to eat. And when Hopper found himself blacklisted in the mid-1960s, he discovered that integrity was a luxury he couldn't afford. Hopper's reputation for violence and insubordination had made him unemployable by major studios. Desperate and nearly broke, he received an invitation to a private casting party at a Mulholland Drive mansion, where men like him could negotiate their return to respectability. According to director Nicholas Ray's memoir, Hopper spent an entire night serving an older financier in exchange for a small role in The Sons of Katie Elder. It was humiliating work, but it put him back on Hollywood's radar, eventually leading to his breakthrough role in Easy Rider. Hopper's ex-girlfriend, actress Brooke Hayward, witnessed his internal struggle. Dennis would endure anything, even humiliation, if it meant stepping in front of the camera again. His art was everything to him, even if pursuing it meant destroying himself piece by piece. In a brutally honest 1983 Rolling Stone interview, Hopper admitted, "I used to be a bastard, but before that, I was a good boy, serving rich men just to do what I loved. The question is, where's the line between survival and selling your soul?" Hopper eventually found success on his own terms, but the journey required him to temporarily abandon everything he claimed to believe about artistic integrity and personal freedom. Tony Curtis, the Bronx boy who learned to use his beauty. Tony Curtis understood from his first day in Hollywood that his face was his most valuable asset. With striking features and a smile that could disarm any casting director, Curtis quickly learned how to leverage his looks for opportunities that talent alone couldn't secure. In 1948, a young man from the Bronx walked into Universal Studios with nothing but ambition and the kind of beauty that made powerful men reconsider their priorities. Within minutes, an elderly producer assessed Curtis with the clinical eye of a buyer. "I think you could be a star, but first, tell me, are you obedient?" According to journalist Robert Hoffler's research, Curtis spent a week living in a casting director's private apartment in exchange for his breakthrough role in Criss Cross. It was a transaction that Curtis never denied, even decades later. "I knew exactly how to use my face," Curtis admitted in a 1990 interview that was later cut from broadcast. "It was the most valuable thing I had when I was young. I treated it like currency and spent it strategically." By the time Curtis starred in classics like Some Like It Hot, the press celebrated him as a heartthrob, unaware of the private auditions that had built his career. In his journal, Curtis wrote, "If people knew what I did to get these roles, they'd never think I was sweet again." Curtis lived long enough to see Hollywood change, but he never forgot the lessons of his youth. That beauty was power, power was survival, and survival sometimes required sacrificing dignity for opportunity. Anthony Perkins. The Delicate Star's Dangerous Game. Anthony Perkins possessed an almost ethereal beauty. Tall, slender, with shy eyes that made directors want to both protect and exploit him. Long before he became Norman Bates, Perkins was surviving as a different kind of performer in New York's underground economy. At the Commodore Hotel, Perkins maintained a regular schedule of appointments arranged by Roy Cohn, the era's most powerful attorney. Cohn specialized in connecting cultured, attractive young men with media moguls who valued discretion above all else. An industry insider told Confidential magazine, Perkins was rare. He made clients feel like they were the only person in the world. In return, they gave him roles, recommendations, connections, everything except respect. When Alfred Hitchcock cast Perkins in Psycho, rumors circulated about a secret clause in the contract requiring Perkins to remain available throughout production. Whether true or not, the whispers followed Perkins for the rest of his career. In unpublished letters to an ex-boyfriend revealed in 2007, Perkins wrote, "I'm not afraid to die for a role. I'm afraid people will find out how I had to die slowly to earn it. Every audition feels like a small funeral for who I used to be." After Psycho, Perkins was typecast not just professionally, but personally. He told a psychologist in 1972, "I'm no longer me. I'm a commodity, a gift that was traded so many times that I forgot who originally owned it." Perkins died of AIDS complications in 1992, taking with him secrets that Hollywood was never ready to confront. Van Johnson, the boy. Next Door's Midnight Transactions. Van Johnson was MGM's signature nice guy, freckled, wholesome, the kind of man mothers wanted for their daughters. But before he could afford to be anyone's ideal, Johnson was sleeping on warehouse floors and borrowing money for food, desperately seeking any opportunity to escape poverty. When director George Cukor spotted Johnson at a cheap Melrose diner in 1938, he saw potential that extended beyond acting ability. "I don't need you to act," Cukor told the struggling young man. "I just need you to behave." That night, Johnson was invited to Cukor's estate for what the director called a bedroom audition. It wasn't about memorizing lines or demonstrating range. It was about proving his willingness to do whatever success required. The following morning, Johnson walked away with a legitimate screen test and enough rent money to survive for 3 months. It was a transaction that Johnson later described to a friend as the night I learned that dignity was a luxury I couldn't afford. During a drinking session years later, Johnson confessed, "I'm not proud of what I did, but I didn't want to go back to sleeping on park benches. In Hollywood, people don't ask who you are. They just ask, will you comply?" Johnson built a successful career playing America's sweetheart, but he never forgot the price of admission to that world. Every wholesome smile, every charming performance was built on a foundation of compromise that the public was never meant to discover. The boy next door had learned to survive by being whatever powerful men needed him to be. George Maharis. The Route 66 stars one fatal mistake. George Maharis was television's perfect leading man in the early 1960s, ruggedly handsome, mysteriously charismatic, the ideal American wanderer in Route 66. But Maharis made a critical error that ended everything. He got caught. On a November night in 1967, Los Angeles police arrested Maharis in the restroom of the Westwood Hotel for indecent conduct with an undercover officer. It was the kind of trap that had destroyed countless careers, but Maharis had believed his fame would protect him. The scandal didn't just raise questions about his sexuality, it exposed the carefully constructed lie of his entire public persona. Court records revealed details that made studio executives panic. Maharis hadn't been arrested for a momentary lapse in judgment, but for participating in the same underground economy that had built his career. Everyone knew from the start he wasn't cast for his acting, a former director revealed decades later. He was beautiful and he was obedient. That combination was worth more than talent in our business. The arrest shattered the illusion that had made Maharis valuable. Within weeks, he was dropped from Route 66 and blacklisted from major productions. The man who had represented American masculinity to millions of viewers suddenly became too dangerous to employ. Maharis spent his remaining years in self-imposed exile, avoiding interviews and never speaking publicly about that fatal night. He had learned too late that the same system that elevated him could destroy him with equal efficiency. His career ended not because he was gay, but because he had been careless enough to get caught breaking the rules that everyone knew but no one acknowledged. John Gavin, The Perfect Gentleman's Imperfect Arrangements. John Gavin was Hollywood's ideal leading man, military bearing, aristocratic features, the kind of clean-cut masculinity that made mothers trust him with their daughters. But Gavin's wholesome image was purchased through arrangements that would have shocked his admirers. By the late 1950s, Gavin had become Universal Studios' go-to actor for heroes and officers, but his casting process rarely involved traditional auditions. Instead, a studio limousine would collect him at midnight, delivering him to a Santa Monica apartment where anonymous men in tuxedos waited. A former Universal driver revealed in his quietly published 1984 memoir, Gavin never asked questions. He'd go in looking like a movie star and come out an hour later, blank-faced, asking for a ride home and a chance to shower. These arrangements secured Gavin roles before scripts were even completed. No auditions, no callbacks, no uncertainty, just a phone call and a midnight appointment that guaranteed employment. A Universal executive later admitted, he was the perfect mask for the ugliness we were hiding behind the scenes. Beautiful enough to distract, compliant enough to never cause problems. Gavin's career flourished through the 1960s, but he paid a psychological price for his success. Friends described a man who seemed increasingly disconnected from his own emotions, as if he had learned to dissociate from his body during those midnight transactions and never fully reconnected. He later served as U.S. ambassador to Mexico, achieving the kind of respectability that Hollywood success could purchase, but never escaping the shadow of how that success had been earned. Farley Granger. The Innocent Faces, Complicated Love. Farley Granger possessed an almost feminine beauty that made him perfect for Alfred Hitchcock's psychological thrillers. With soft features and vulnerable eyes, he was the kind of actor who could make audiences feel protective and directors feel possessive. In 1950, Granger entered a relationship with screenwriter Arthur Lawrence that was equal parts romance and business arrangement. Lawrence controlled not just Granger's heart, but his career, determining which roles he accepted and which compromises he made. Arthur taught me how to love, how to pretend, and how to lie down when I needed to keep a role, Granger admitted in his memoir, Include Me Out. It was a brutally honest assessment of a relationship that blended genuine affection with calculated career advancement. Every time Granger landed a new role, Hollywood whispered the same question. Who did he sleep with this week? The speculation became so persistent that a production assistant was fired for joking about it on the set of Strangers on a Train. Granger never confirmed or denied the rumors because he understood that speculation was less dangerous than truth. In one of his final interviews, he offered a philosophical reflection. I was used to it, but I don't regret it because in this world, if you don't let them touch your body, they'll never let you touch the spotlight. The relationship with Lawrence lasted 15 years, during which Granger navigated the complex intersection of genuine emotion and professional necessity. He had learned that in Hollywood, love could be both salvation and transaction, sometimes simultaneously. Guy Madison, the cowboy who served more than coffee. Guy Madison was America's ideal cowboy in The Adventures of Wild Bill Hickok. Clean-shaven, square-jawed, the kind of man who embodied post-war American values. But before he could play heroes on television, Madison learned to survive by serving powerful men in private. As an unemployed Navy veteran in Los Angeles, Madison discovered that his matinee idol looks could provide income in ways the GI Bill never covered. The Beverly Hills Hotel became his primary workplace, where he was hired not just to serve dinner, but to be part of the evening's entertainment. A former hotel employee revealed that wealthy guests would specifically request Madison for private dinners, where he was expected to appear shirtless for the first 20 minutes before disappearing into the host's bedroom. It was work that paid well and asked few questions. Guy didn't mind, an anonymous director wrote in his memoir. He was gorgeous and understood his role. I once saw him smile as someone handed him a room key, like it was a routine he'd rehearsed 1,000 times. When television fame finally arrived, Madison never discussed his pre-stardom survival strategies. But Hollywood's memory was long, and industry insiders never forgot seeing him in hotel bathrooms at 3 a.m., washing off the evidence of transactions that had nothing to do with acting. Madison built a successful career playing American heroes, but he never escaped the knowledge that his heroism was a performance purchased through less heroic means. William Haines. The Man Who Chose Love. Over Lies. William Haines was MGM's most bankable romantic comedy star in the late 1920s and one of the very few openly gay men in classic Hollywood. But his path to authenticity was paved with the same compromises that trapped his closeted contemporaries. Before he could live honestly, Haines survived by working in exclusive gentlemen's clubs where membership required invitation and discretion was guaranteed. These weren't just social gatherings, they were sophisticated networks where young men could be seen, introduced, and selected by powerful industry figures. I don't work there for money, Haines once told a friend. I work there to be seen, to be introduced, to be chosen. It's an audition by another name. When Haines was caught in a hotel with his longtime partner in 1933, he faced the same ultimatum that destroyed other careers. Deny everything or lose everything. But Haines surprised everyone. He chose love over lies. I love him, he told the press defiantly. I won't give him up. MGM fired him immediately, but Haines had calculated the cost and decided his integrity was worth more than his contract. He reinvented himself as Hollywood's most successful interior designer, creating homes for the same stars who had once been his colleagues. Near the end of his life, Haines reflected, I don't regret loving, but I do regret having to sell that love just to buy back my career in the first place. Haines proved that escape was possible, but only for those brave enough to sacrifice everything they had built on compromised foundations. Tyrone Power, the matinee idol's palm, Springs auditions. Tyrone Power was the embodiment of 1940s masculine beauty. Dark eyes, perfect features, the kind of leading man that made women swoon and men envious. But Power learned early that beauty in Hollywood wasn't a gift. It was currency that required careful spending. In 1936, before signing with 20th Century Fox, Power was invited to a Palm Springs vacation with an older producer. The retreat was later documented in FBI files as one of many casting parties disguised as private getaways, where young actors auditioned in ways that had nothing to do with memorizing lines. A staff member at the Palm Springs estate told journalist William Mann that Power was asked to try on swimwear, then he was asked to try obedience. The next morning, he walked out with a 5-year contract. Throughout his career, Power's calendar was carefully managed by studio handlers who understood that his value extended beyond his acting ability. His appearances at exclusive industry gatherings were investments that secured financing for major productions. Cesar Romero, Power's close friend and fellow actor, once observed, "Tyrone knew that to stay where he was, he had to protect the image, even if the cost was never being allowed to tell the truth about how he got there." Power died of a heart attack in 1958 while filming Solomon and Sheba in Spain. He was just 44, having spent his adult life maintaining a perfect image built on imperfect foundations. Those who knew him understood that the heart attack wasn't just medical, it was the culmination of decades of carrying secrets that grew heavier with each passing year. Ramon Novarro. The Silent Star's Violent End. Ramon Novarro was one of silent cinema's greatest stars, a rival to Rudolph Valentino, whose exotic looks and passionate performances made him a global sensation. But his death in 1968 revealed the dark economy that had sustained his career for decades. On Halloween night, police found Novarro dead in his Laurel Canyon home, strangled with a telephone cord, his mouth stuffed with tissue. His killers, Paul and Tom Ferguson, were young hustlers he had hired for the evening, believing he was hiding cash in the house. The murder investigation uncovered a more complex truth. Novarro had been both client and provider in Hollywood's underground economy for nearly 40 years. A list of his special clients read like a who's who of directors, politicians, and A-list stars. One client testified during the murder trial. "I met him when I was 17. He said, 'Just behave, and I'll get you in a film.' And he did." Novarro had survived by selling access to himself while simultaneously providing access to others. The testimony revealed that Novarro operated under multiple fake names, maintaining different personas for different types of clients. He was simultaneously predator and prey, mentor and victim in a system that consumed everyone it touched. He died as he had lived, alone, transacting with strangers who saw him only as a commodity. The legend, who had once commanded millions at the box office, died for the few dollars his killers believed he was hiding. Novarro's violent end served as a reminder that in Hollywood's shadow economy, everyone was expendable, and no one was ever truly safe. Richard Chamberlain, the TV doctor's double life. As Dr. Kildare in NBC's hit medical series, Richard Chamberlain was the dreamboat of millions. Handsome, compassionate, the ideal husband that every mother wanted for her daughter. But behind the stethoscope was a man living in constant fear of exposure. Chamberlain's career was built on midnight auditions in Beverly Hills, where directors and network executives evaluated candidates based on physical compliance rather than acting ability. These weren't traditional tryouts. They were transactions that determined not just roles, but entire career trajectories. A former assistant revealed to Hollywood Insider, he never left the studio with his lover. All meetings happened at his private apartment. Windows always shut, curtains always drawn, phone always unplugged. He lived like a prisoner in his own success. When a male co-star once suggested they go public with their relationship, Chamberlain's response revealed the brutal mathematics of his situation. "If I lose this role because I love you, will you be able to feed me?" Chamberlain maintained his heterosexual image for 40 years, dating women publicly while conducting his real relationships in absolute secrecy. Every public appearance was a performance designed to protect not just his career, but his survival in an industry that destroyed those who broke character. Only after retiring did Chamberlain dare acknowledge his truth, but by then he had spent decades living as a prisoner of his own success. The doctor who had healed others on screen had never been able to heal the split between his public and private selves. Troy Donahue. The Golden Boy's Midnight Appointments. Troy Donahue was the golden boy of 1960s teen cinema, blonde, bronzed, the epitome of California surf culture. But when the cameras stopped rolling, Donahue didn't go home to his publicized girlfriend. Instead, he answered invitations to exclusive parties where casting happened behind closed doors. At a 1958 gathering on Mulholland Drive, Donahue was summoned into a private room where director Jack Warner and two wealthy filmbackers waited. A server who was present recalled, "He came out 30 minutes later, pale as a sheet. He hadn't been asked to act, just to let them see what he looked like without clothes." The next morning, Donahue had a 7-year contract with Warner Brothers. It was the kind of instant success that looked like luck, but was actually the result of a very specific transaction. From that point forward, every role Donahue played came with invisible strings attached. In a journal that surfaced after his death, he wrote, "Every time I appeared on screen, I had to erase a part of myself. After a few years, there was nothing left but the image they created." Donahue's golden boy image couldn't survive the 1970s, and as his career declined, so did his ability to maintain the psychological distance that had protected him during his peak years. He spiraled into addiction, lost everything, and died alone in 2001. His tragedy wasn't just personal, it was systematic, the predictable result of an industry that consumed its most beautiful products and discarded them when they were no longer useful. Rudolph Valentino, the original Latin lover's survival story. Before there was Rock Hudson or Cary Grant, there was Rudolph Valentino, Hollywood's first manufactured heartthrob, the Latin lover who made women faint in movie theaters across America. But long before audiences worshipped him, Valentino was just another immigrant struggling to survive in New York's unforgiving streets. According to Emily Lader's 2003 biography, Valentino worked as a waiter in Manhattan before being fired for getting too friendly with male clients. Desperate and facing deportation due to his illegal residency status, he was introduced to a secret male escort club called Mickey, where wealthy men could rent beautiful young men for $50 per night. He didn't want to do it, an old acquaintance told the Brooklyn Eagle years later. But when someone threatened to call immigration, Valentino said yes. Every week, someone came to take him home. It was one of those clients, producer Norman Cary, who eventually brought Valentino to California and secured him the role in The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, 1921, the film that made him a global sensation. But success built on such foundations carried a permanent stain. In a handwritten note discovered after his sudden death in 1926, Valentino had scribbled a haunting confession. "The world calls me their lover, but the first night I ever lay still, no one kissed me at all." Valentino died at 31, officially from peritonitis, but those who knew his story understood he had been dying slowly since those first desperate nights in New York, when survival required sacrificing dignity one transaction at a time. 20 men, 20 stories of compromise, survival, and the true cost of stardom in Hollywood's so-called golden age. Each of these actors faced the same impossible choice: maintain their dignity and remain invisible, or sacrifice their authenticity for a chance to shine under the studio lights. Some, like William Haines, eventually chose love over lies, walking away from fame to live authentically. Others, like James Dean and Sal Mineo, died young, taking their secrets with them. Many, like Rock Hudson and Cary Grant, spent their entire lives maintaining elaborate performances designed to protect truths that could never be spoken. Their stories reveal that Hollywood's golden age was golden only for those powerful enough to avoid paying its true price. For these 20 men and countless others whose names we'll never know, the price was their bodies, their silence, and often their souls. The system that created these legends was built on exploitation disguised as opportunity. It promised stardom but delivered a different kind of performance, one that happened in hotel rooms and private mansions, far from any camera or applause. Today, as we celebrate these actors' iconic performances, we must remember that their greatest acting may have been convincing the world that they had chosen their fate freely. What do you think? Has this system truly changed, or has it simply become more sophisticated? Let us know in the comments below. And if this opens your eyes to Hollywood's hidden history, make sure to subscribe for more stories the industry never wanted you to hear.